Thank you so much, Zamar. You let me know if you ever want to run for office. We need more people like him in politics, am I right? Hashtag Zamar for Congress. This week, Floridians are reeling from yet another tragedy in our state. The news coming out of Parkland is all too familiar for us here in Orlando. 2 years ago, we were feeling the same grief. I wasn't at Pulse that night, but I had friends there and been there many times before, as I know many of you have. Orlando had Pulse as our safe space, and the shooting happened on Latin night. And for young, queer Latinx folks like myself, Pulse's Latin nights were pure joy. You could look around and see people who looked like you, who spoke your language, who dressed like us, who acted like us. It was a night we felt free, we would feel safe, but all of that changed on June 12, 2016. That night also sparked in so many who were part of a new generation of young leaders a passion and a drive to do justice for the victims we'd lost and those who survived. This week, we have to channel the exact same strength and determination to strive for this justice. We can't let tragedies like Sandy Hook or Las Vegas or Charleston or Pulse or Parkland to continue. We must fight for change to ensure that this never happens again. And we owe it. We owe it to those who we have lost to not settle for anything less. I'm incredibly honored to be joined by two people who are doing just that. My friends, Christine Leinonen and Brandon Wolf. Christine.
Thank you so much, Carlos. My son, Christopher, his boyfriend, Juan, and 47 others were murdered at the Pulse nightclub. Christopher was my only child. He was a proud gay man. I couldn't have loved him more. As I used to tell him, you can't do better than perfect. Christopher, his friends called him Drew, was always a force for good in the world. In high school, he won the Anne Frank Humanitarian Award for starting the first gay-straight alliance there. He was a supporter of the Human Rights Campaign and never shied away from speaking up for those who needed it most. Like many of you here tonight, he was a therapist. He would have loved this conference. Christopher lost his voice that night, but I didn't lose mine. The news coming out of Parkland this week has been difficult for me to process. I know too well what many parents, students, and loved ones are going through. It's a type of pain and anguish no parent should ever experience. And it's for that reason that I will continue to fight to make sure that no parent has to experience this pain again. Since Christopher's death, I've spoken out in small groups and in a large arena. I've called on politicians to do better by LGBTQ youth. I've spoken out forcefully for common sense gun safety resolutions. And while I know we have an uphill battle, I'm so proud to be part of a chorus of voices that is unrelenting. didn't lose my voice, and you didn't lose yours. When you go back to teach, to connect to young people, to visit with a patient, remember my son and raise your voice a little louder on his behalf. Speaking of, I'm so pleased to be here with Brandon Wolf, who is doing just that. Brandon? He's also one of my son's good friends, best friends. Okay, they barely knew each other. I'm kidding.
Thank you, Christine. We did know each other. In truth, Christine's son, Drew, and his boyfriend, Juan, were my very best friends. You know, I remember the first thing that Drew said the night that we met. He said, "What are your thoughts on the for-profit healthcare system and its impact on consumers?" He didn't ask me, "Where are you from?" or "What do you like to do on the weekend?" Instead, he immediately launched into a question more fitting for a presidential debate. So when I say he was one of a kind, I think that's putting it mildly. But he taught me so much. When we met, I had recently left rural Oregon where I grew up, and I never really fit in. I was bullied for the way that I looked, for the way I talked, the way I walked. I spent my entire childhood being told I wasn't quite black enough. I was never white enough, and I was definitely not straight enough. By 18, I was convinced that I simply wasn't enough. But Drew, he was this half-Japanese, half-Finnish kid who somehow fit in anywhere he went and made everybody feel like a part of the conversation. His friends were a melting pot. He taught me that even though we may not all look the same or have the same backgrounds, our struggles are more alike than they are different. Drew, Juan, my boyfriend Eric, and I went to Pulse together that night. We got there around midnight. It was busy, and there we were, 4 friends, all different, laughing, dancing, telling stupid jokes. We were nothing I had imagined was possible. We were black, white, gay, Asian, Latino, and simply full of love for each other. In fact, our last conversation of that night was exactly that. On the patio, in the usual way he did, Drew gathered us all in a circle and put his long arms around our shoulders. And he said, "You know what we never say enough? Is that we love each other. So I want to tell you guys, I love you." It was just a few moments after that that the first shots rang out. My boyfriend and I made a run for the door between rounds, but Drew and Juan never got that chance. I'm not going to pretend that the aftermath of that shooting wasn't a challenge. There were plenty of days where I could hardly get out of bed, but a force compelled me to do more. I think that force was Drew. I knew that with every passing day, the void left by Drew and Juan's love would be stuffed full of political leverage, Fox News panels, Islamophobia, and hatred. If I didn't raise my voice, my friends would lose theirs once and for all. So I did. Very, very slowly at first. I can remember sitting with CNN and choking through my tears just to tell the world about Drew and Juan. 2 people madly in love. Not gay love, not biracial love, just love. And it was in their story that I finally found my message. The reason for getting out of bed, for tossing the covers off and stepping onto the front line. And I kept talking. I talked about LGBTQ equality and racism. And I joined Christine in speaking out about the tragic realities of gun violence in this country and the need to pass common sense gun safety measures. I also helped found the Drew Project, where we work to help launch gay-straight alliances, to send future leaders to college, and where we get to work with many folks like you in this room tonight. Listen, the massacre at Pulse was supposed to scare us. It was meant to leave us feeling alone. But Drew knew that we weren't. It hurt so much to see coverage out of Parkland this week. These are children. No parent should ever have to feel afraid to send their kids to school. No LGBTQ young person should be afraid to enjoy an evening out with their friends. No friend, no partner, no parent should ever mourn the loss of a loved one like this. We must rise above calls for division and hate and band together, remembering what Drew told us, that our differences are our strengths. We are all challenged to live life like Drew, taking care of others and leaving the world better than we found it. Friends, we've got our work cut out for us. But we're so pleased, I am so pleased, that you are all here this weekend, ready, rolling up your sleeves to carry on Drew's legacy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.